This is Anna Sprague, and Anna, if you've been around for a little while, Anna was here, came as a freshman a couple years ago, and then she was gone for a little while, and then she came back this past December, well, January.
Yeah.
She came in January, and in the interim, she has had some amazing experiences. Is that probably a good way to say it? Yeah, one of which is a great story that she came back, she sat down one day and told me her story, and I was like crazy, and then she said, I'd be willing to tell it sometime. So I thought tonight would be a good night for her to kind of tell her story, the things that God's teaching her, and the ways in which God has taught her some of those things. And then we'll go from there, okay? Let's go for Anna Sprague.
Hey y'all, as Mary said, I'm Anna. So what I was doing in that most of that about year I was gone was sailing on a tall ship, which I think mostly like stairs. That's basically a pirate ship. So I kind of got jokes a lot that I was a pirate. But it's this ship that was in Pirates of the Caribbean. It's a square rigger. It had 3 masts, which was square sails. It's huge. And I would climb up and down the mast and act like a pirate, except for the whole stealing and pillaging thing. But I was a sailor, so I did that part. And I did it for 6 months, almost exactly. You gotta start like how I came to this life. A little background on me. When I was younger, in high school, I felt like I was always called to mission work, but it never really worked out. In high school, I thought about graduating early and going to Africa. That didn't work out, and I was always really confused because I felt this huge draw towards it, but it never worked out. Like, it never paid out. I was like, God, why are you calling me this? And it's not really working out for me. I kind of didn't know what I wanted to do. And one night, I was just crying, devastated. I don't know why. I just didn't know where my life was going. It's one of those moments I feel like most people have them. But I was in bed just sobbing one night, just like, God, what do you want me to do with my life? Because I'm looking and you're not giving me answers. Like, no idea where I'm going. And so I prayed and I just sat and listened for a while. And all I heard was go to the Tall Ships Festival tomorrow, which I thought was really weird. But in my head, like, that's like the only thing that popped in my head, which is just go to the Tall Ships Festival tomorrow, I'll be fine. So I was like, all right. I wasn't really planning on going, so the next morning I got up and went. And I went down to River Street, which is in Savannah. Like, there's all these tall ships lined up, and I instantly fell in love. I knew that that's what I wanted to do. I was going to find any way to get onto one of those ships and try to sail on it. And I did. It was surprisingly really easy for me to get on. It was like God perfectly laid out this perfect path. I overheard 2 crew members talking, and they were girls about my age, and I was like, wow, people like me can actually do this. And then I asked them what boat they were from. I said Bounty, and I went on and I walked up, and literally the first person there, I was just like, how do you get on this boat? And he said, well, we're taking volunteers. We just lost a lot of people for various reasons. So I managed to get on, which is incredible. So the next couple weeks, I completely immersed myself in sailing and learning everything there was about sailing. I had a little bit of sailing experience in my past. I'd done some racing on the Auburn sailing team, but no square rigger ship like sailing, which is completely different. And I had a lot of catching up to do. These people knew what they were doing, and they were smart. To give you background on the culture on the boat is these people, they're tattooed. They look like, some of them look like what you would see as hobos on the street, but they're incredibly smart. Like, they just are minimalist. They know what they want, and I mean, incredible people, but also it's a work hard, play hard mentality. When underway, we would work 12 hours a day, but when you got in port, you also played really hard, and it was kind of that party culture, not a lot of spirituality or Christianity. And so when I started developing relations on this boat, I started kind of immersing myself in this culture more and realizing, like, yes, God wants me to sail, but He wants me to sail and be in this culture for a reason. He wants me to be a Christian among a place that has very little Christianity, very little of that at all. You'd even get a lot of people who really didn't dislike me, but really disliked religion and didn't want anything to do with religion, didn't want you to talk about it, or if you talked about it, were very, really against it. But in getting to know those people, I got to know this one girl, Amanda, who was also a Christian, very, very good Christian, she's got stuff figured out. But we started having our small groups, just us two, because we were the only Christians on board. And we had them random places. We called them our random place small group. It was just fun. But she told me that she had been praying for a while for another Christian to come into the tall ship industry, because she felt like this was a culture that was really untouched and didn't once again have that. And thought it was really cool that here I was, I'm answering your prayers, and wow, God really just lined this up for me, and was this is where you're going, this is how you're doing it, here you are, which always just amazed me. So we started doing that, and when doing that, we stuck to this kind of verse that was all we could kind of do as Christians, we felt at that point. It's Philippians 2:15, and it says, "So that you may become blameless and pure, children of God, without fault in a crooked and depraved generation, in which you shine like stars in the universe." Basically, these people mostly had advanced degrees. They weren't looking to be saved. They weren't really looking, they had stuff figured out. They want to sail. They knew that's what they wanted to do. They didn't want to be changed or anything. What we could do, was live as Christians and let people know that we're Christianity. We'd pray for opportunities to talk about our faith, but, you couldn't push it on them. They weren't looking for that. If you did that, they automatically would have just pushed you away and not talked to you. And we just asked what we could do and let God work through us. And it was really cool to see Him do that. Things that we never could have done by ourselves. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. I got to develop relations with these people, and even though I was on there for 6 months, the saying was that 1 week in tall ships is 1 month in real life. That's because you're sleeping, you're living with these people, you're working with these people, you're also your co-workers, they're your family, you're also your friends. When you go to port, no one really know you, they're the people you hang out with. You're living with these people 24/7. It's about 20 people packed into this little ship. Comparatively small for 20 people to be living in it. A bunk space this big with 4 people living in it. You got to know each other really well, whether you wanted to or not. And it was really cool. I learned a lot from that. I learned unconditional love. I learned there's people like Claudine who, when she first got on the boat, annoyed me a little bit. And I was like, how am I going to be working with this person? But as you got to know each person, the people who I even annoyed me or didn't like at first, I loved. They became my family, unconditionally, no matter who they were. And that was really cool. I learned really not to judge people and just live with them. And that's all I could do. And so I did this, and eventually I sailed and just developed relationships with these people. And it was cool. I developed a lot spiritually. I met my boyfriend, now currently Mark, on the boat, and we both together. It was really cool because Amanda left, and I was once again kind of scared because I was put in this culture by myself without that support. It was nice having her there because she checks me, you know, she was there for you, like she made sure I didn't fall too far, and I did the same for her. So when she left, I was really scared, but I started getting close to his Mark, and I found out he was really spiritual and really loved God, and so it was really nice to have him there. And when we first got together, we didn't get together for 3 months. We'd like been living together and like didn't even notice each other, but we knew each other in each other's lives for a reason. We didn't know why though. I remember even like having conversations with him. I was like, I really feel like we're in each other's lives for a reason, but I don't know why. And he's felt the same way. So one day after I was in the boat 5.5 months, the captain. Oh, I forgot this part. Sorry. I don't want to go off too much, but this is important. The captain on the boat is like not blasphemous, but he's like God. Like everyone's on this boat to learn sailing, and the captain knows everything about sailing. Like this goal is to learn as much as you possibly can about sailing and your job. This guy's been sailing his whole life and knows everything, the ins and outs. So, like I think I remember every single conversation I have ever had with this guy. Like that's how important it is when you talk to him. It's like think of your idol, like not, but yeah. I mean, this is that guy. Like you respect him on any boat you're on. You're the captain is. He's the final word. It's the dictatorship, but it's a respected dictatorship. That's how it has to work. And when we're underway, you put your lives into everyone else's hands on the boat, because when you're sleeping, you're relying on the people that have the deck to make sure they don't crash the boat, or that if a fire happens, they notice. Every day, you're putting your lives into their hands, and so there's a lot of trust. Anyway, so one day, the captain calls us on deck. We're about to leave New London, Connecticut, and we're going to go down south for a long transit. We're really excited because it's going to be our first really long transit. It's going to be about 2 weeks, and we're going to go to St. Petersburg. And he said, we're still planning on going. I've sailed on this boat for 17 years. I know what this boat can do. But he said, but there's a hurricane coming, Hurricane Sandy. Already been nicknamed Frankenstorm, other various nicknames, the storm of the century, because of its size. He said, we're going to try to sail halfway to England and then go around it, but we'll see what the storm does. So we start sailing, and we start going inland. It doesn't really matter what path was. Basically, we sail into the storm. And honestly, I was excited. That sounds crazy, but I really, really trusted. It was that trust. Like I trusted my captain. And you don't go on tall ships to have for a cruise. I mean, you're there for the adventure. That's why everyone goes on a tall ship. So it'd been a pretty light sailing season, and I was ready for some weather and to have some adventure. But I mean, obviously I was a little nervous. We start sailing into it, and the weather, I think the waves get up to about 25, 30 feet, so taller than this building. Winds, I think at the end were about 60 miles per hour up to 90 miles per hour gust, which is a lot if you've never been in that. But it was cool. For me, at the beginning, I was on the boat. She takes it very well. But on Sunday, the 28th, she started taking on more water than we could handle. Basically, the generator stopped working, and the water started filling up the boat. And I started getting a little nervous because I'd never seen that much water. I mean, she's in a boat. She always has a certain amount of water in her, but not this much. Basically, there are 3 layers on the ship Bounty. There's the deck, the weather deck, which is obvious, it's where you can feel the weather. The tween decks, because it's the in-between decks, and then the lower decks, which is where we live, the crew. And so I went to go get some of my stuff, and the floorboards were coming up with water, and I started getting really nervous. I realized it was really unsafe to be down there. So my stuff was already soaked, gone. So I managed to grab some of my friend's stuff and bring it up, and they're basically like, no one else go down. When I was down there, the electricity was blinking on and off because it was struggling to get power. Apparently something happened with the fuel. There was a leak, and we didn't spot it in time, and all the fuel of a generator just came out, and the generator failed and we couldn't get up and running, which means we couldn't power the bilge pumps. The bilge pumps are what pump out the water. So we couldn't get that pumped out, and the boat just kept filling up with water. And we kept trying everything. There's all these other pumps we tried, but nothing would work. Like, everything went wrong, you can imagine. And eventually, the captain said we'd eventually have to abandon ship, which is something you never hope to hear, ever. Because that's the scariest thing. Because we were 90 miles away from shore in a hurricane. We had contact with the Coast Guard, but they said they wouldn't be able to get us until 6 o'clock the next morning because they wouldn't be able to get the helicopters out there because the winds were too strong. So we're doing our best to hold on to 6 o'clock because you kind of learn by your own boats. You don't leave the boat until you have to, because you're always going to be safe on the boat than a life raft. The boat's a big area. Helicopters can see it easier. You don't want to risk getting to water and not getting to the life raft. So far, so forth. So eventually, the captain caught abandoned ship, which is crazy. We all probably hadn't slept in like 20 hours. We're all sleep deprived, all just working. A lot of people asked me if I was scared, and I wasn't, which is weird, but you can't be. You just focus. I just always had something to do, always focusing, always working, everyone working together. And it was like, this is your family that I was with. So we got into our immersion suits. I'll probably use the term gumpy suits, because that's what we always said, because when you get into them, you look like gumpies. Everyone knows what that looks like, but I mean, you can barely move in them. They're like these big things, but immersion suits, basically when you get in the water, it's like a giant life jacket. It's supposed to keep you warm. It's supposed to, like, you can survive in 3 days in Alaska water in these things, apparently. So they're legit. We're getting into these, which the only time I've ever done them was got into this nice sunny day when you have to practice getting to them. You have to know how to get into them in 30 seconds. So we're getting to our immersion suits. And we're also getting harnesses to put our water bottles on, and so we could clip up to the lines when we jumped into the water to go to the life rafts. So there are a couple people who are already injured because the boat's rolling, and some people had, when the boat rolled, not been holding on to anything and been thrown across the decks. So there's one guy who already had a broken back, and then our captain also had an injured back. So Mark and I had gotten everyone up onto the decks. A lot of people needed help. And we were the last ones. And then I was about to go up on deck when I see my captain. And he is in his cabin, and he's trying his emergency suit on, but he can't because he had broken his back. And so he asked me for his help. And he was in a lot of pain. And it was probably the most humbling thing I've ever done. Because you could just see like the look on his and our mate's eyes. The mates are like, it's the first mate, second mate, third mate. It's the levels of hierarchy, I guess you would say. I mean, his life was sinking beneath his feet, literally. He had a broken back. I'm sure it felt like he let down his crew and himself. And I was helping him put on his emergency suit. I couldn't do myself. Mark came over and helped me, and we went on deck. Mark was really scaring me. He was the most out of it I had ever seen. They called for us to bring the rest of the stuff in the tween decks. We had a lot of emergency supplies and stuff. and Mark had literally worked himself to exhaustion. He just like was out of it. Eventually like yelled at him to come on deck, and he did. We eventually sit down. We're waiting for the call to like officially abandon ship, put the life rafts in the water. And I remember I was sitting next to Mark on one side, and then the third mate, Dan, on the other. Dan had his immersion suit around his waist because you can't really do much in those. So he was trying to just, he needed to still work. He needed to do the lines to the life raft, and he couldn't work with his suit all the way on. I heard the call for abandon ship just as the boat rolled all the way over to one side. Basically at this point she had gotten so much water and she was already heeling over, just because a boat heels over. We would call hove to. So you put them to one side so they take the waves easier. And so she's leaning to one side, which is okay. But she's gotten so much water that when a wave came, it slowly like pushed her all the way over. So she was at 90-degree angle. And I was luckily with some of the other people. There was these yards that we had lashed to the deck that we had just built in yard. The yards say like this is a mast. Okay, the yards go perpendicular to it, and that's what holds the square sails. So we've taken these yards down, or have built some of them, and we just lashed them to the deck, along the deck. And so when it rolled, I was standing on those. I remember Dan was yelling at me to help, like not yet at me, but just yelling that he didn't have his immersion suit on. We're about to go in the water. So somehow I managed to help him get it on. I turn around and I just see a whole bunch of orange in the water. There's 10 miles of zip line on 10 miles of line on this boat. The rigging, the masts go 115 feet into the air. So all that line and rigging are in the water, and when you jump into it, you're getting tangled in it, and there's all these yards and spars, and it's just stuff everywhere, and it's attached to the boat that's sinking. And I turned, and the only thing I could do, I had to get aft, I knew, to the lifeboats, and so I just jumped, kind of for this mast that had a rail around it that had pins on it that you belay lines to. It's called a bike rail. I jumped towards it, but I didn't make it. A wave picked me. I went under the water. I got stuck under lines. Somehow, it's all kind of a blur, but somehow I made it out of that. I managed to find 2 of my friends. I held on to them, and we didn't really know what to do, but a wave took us, and we got separated again. I managed to swim. Somehow I got stuck in between lines in a spar. Once again, a yard that holds sails, the spar. It's just this wooden, like just a wooden log in those lines. I got stuck in between. I call out for Mark. He comes and helps me and find him. And that was really important because I honestly don't know if I could have made it without him. He kept me going. It was one of those things, when I didn't know what to do, he knew what to do. When he didn't know what to do, I seemed to know what to do. At that point, he put reason in my head, he should just swim away from the ship, because stuff was falling down from it everywhere. There's blocks falling down that could hit you in the head. And the yards were going up and down, which the mast would basically go 20 feet into the water, and then they come back up. So the boat with the waves is just going up and down, like underwater and then above. It's just heeling back and forth. So it keeps hitting you, and then I know some people got brought up with it. We managed to wake ourselves to this life raft canister, but it's not deployed yet, because the way it works is that it has to be about 20 feet from the boat to be deployed. It has this line that once it's 20 feet, that initiates it to deploy. So it's not deployed yet, it's not far enough from the boat. I see the first mate, John, there. And I remember asking him, is this going to deploy? And he's just like, I hope so. But before it does, at this point, the yards are 20 feet underwater. They start coming up, and it catches John. I see him go up into the air and just he's like straddling this yard and just kind of plop into the water. And that's the last I see of him. Mark pulls me, and we gotta swim away. We start swimming away, and the life raft deploys. We start swimming back to it. But as we're swimming back to it, the yards are coming back down from when it just came up. And miraculously, so a yard starts coming down onto the life raft. And we're both thinking, like, this thing's gonna pop. Somehow it doesn't. The yard breaks, which to this day I don't know how. But it didn't. So we grabbed the raft and we start swimming away. We found 2 of our crewmates, pulled them to the raft. And then the next obstacle comes is we can't get into this raft. This is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, is to get into this raft, which is supposed to save my life, but I can't get into it. I don't know, it's like, I guess you're in 40-foot seats, it's a lot harder to do in this weather than it is in a pool. But, so we all tried 3 times. And these are pretty strong guys, but none of us can get into it. I finally like, I have to get into this now, like, or else I'm gonna die. Because even though we're holding onto this thing, we're swallowing water, we're exhausted, even though we're floating, we're still swimming. So I eventually just like calm myself. I just have like a moment of peace. And I managed to find a little like foot thing that you like put your foot in. I don't know, it's like this rope thing. And then I kind of just think of it like rock climbing. You have to like strategize about it. The problem was that there wasn't a handhold right above it. There's a handhold here, and a handhold on the other side, inside the raft. But there's nothing in between. So I managed to get up, and somehow I get into it. And this is miraculous, because now I can help everyone else get into it. So I help Mark, and then we help everyone else. And then somehow 3 other people show on the other side of the life raft, and we get them into it. And this takes probably a total of an hour to get 7 people into the life raft. Because it took so much effort. A lot of people had water in their gummy suits, so they couldn't lift up their legs. So we literally had to, we're all exhausted already, drag them in. Finally, there's 7 of us in this life raft. There's no one else around. We don't know what happened. I just remember we're sitting in this life raft. We're all kind of on the edges to balance it out, because we can't be in the middle, because when a wave would come, it just collapsed the life raft and we'd all run into each other. We're okay, because it's, to give you an image of the life raft, it's like a giant bouncy house, like on all sides. So it's very soft and bouncy. But occasionally we just get crashed into each other, kind of go to the sides. And all we could do at this point is wait, and just wait. The Coast Guard got to us, so they could find us. And none of us had any idea what had happened to other crewmates. In my head, I was sure that half of us were gone, that there's no way they could have made it. Because it was so hard for me to get out of it all. And I knew it was so really hard for everyone else to get out of it. I had seen my first mate get lifted up into the air and then go into the water head first with stuff around. I had heard, as I was swimming away, a girl crying out in the rigging, just like help, help. No one else was around, everyone else was away from the boat. And I had this image that still I dream about sometimes, of a girl crying out. I had no idea what had happened. We didn't really, I don't know if you've all been in a situation like that, but it's like you're just completely helpless. And we're sitting there kind of trying to keep up our spirits, trying to be positive, being like, well, there was half of us in this raft, there's a good chance another half in the other raft, but in my head I was thinking there's no way. We had seen it deploy, but we didn't know if anyone had gone into it or was in it. So we're sitting there, and then one of the crew members, Doug, one of the oldest guys, the oldest guy on the ship, asked, "You're a Christian, right, Anna?" I go, "Oh yeah." And he goes, "Will you pray for us?" And I did. And then every single person in that life raft went around and said a prayer, which was huge. I never thought that I would hear a prayer coming out of some of these people's mouths. It was a really surreal moment. And then my friend Josh, who I forgot to mention, he came on the boat halfway through, and he was also a Christian. He said that he knew his church was praying for us because his parents had told him before they left that they would be praying the whole way. And it literally felt like they're guardian angels around our life raft. And I have a verse. It says, it is Psalm 34:18. It says, "The Lord is near the brokenhearted. He is a savior of those who are crushed down." And it was weird, but I saw God in a hurricane, in this disaster. Somehow in this disaster, God created good. God kept our spirits up. And there are people who I never thought I would hear say a prayer, I also have another verse, Matthew 5, chapter 5, verse 3. "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." And I don't know if these people out in Minecraft, were ever going to become Christian, or if they're ever going to pray to God again. But I do know they did then, and that when they were at their lowest, and when I was at this lowest, God was there. He was really obvious. So eventually, we were rescued, obviously, because I'm here. But the Coast Guard did come, about when they said they would. And that was incredible, but one of the greatest things, when I was pulled up into that helicopter, the first person I see is John, my first mate, who I thought for sure was dead. And that gave me a lot of hope that if they could pick him out, they picked him up out of the water. He didn't make it into a life raft. But they picked him up out of the water, that they would find others. We get back to Elizabeth City, North Carolina, and they have no idea. They're asking us, so the rescue swimmer came, he was pulling me, this guy's amazing, he can swim like no other. But he was asking me during our swim that there's other people in the other life raft, and I was like, I don't know, I hope so. I thought y'all might know, but that was a little scary. But we get back, and we're the first people there. We still have no idea, and I don't know what to do. I mean, I feel like half my friends, half my family, half my coworkers are gone for sure. I call my mom. Well, we get there and they tell us it's international news, which is a shock. I realized I told my parents. I wasn't even sure they knew the boat had sank. So I called them, of course they know because it's international news. Half the world knew. So I get there, I call my mom, she said, I heard you were missing, and I was like, I have no idea, Mom. We don't know anything. But in my head, I was like, only two are missing. As far as that sounds, I was convinced everyone was missing. As I say that, I see the other helicopter people that came in the other helicopter and the other raft walk in, and I just start breaking down in tears. Pretty shortly, we find out that it's our captain and Claudia Christian who are missing. And it was hard. As thankful as it was that it wasn't more, and surprised it wasn't more, it's still really hard. And we kept hoping. They said they'd keep looking. Eventually, they did find Claudine, but they found her dead. When I found out, they said she wasn't responsive, so I thought they found her, she'd be okay, and it took a while for me to figure out, or let myself figure out that no, she had died. It was hard. We were all going to Walmart. The Red Cross had given us money to get clothes. Obviously, we lost everything. And we were in this cab, and we were all crying in these jumpsuits. A bunch of tall ship, like hardcore sailors, breaking down and walking around in Walmart in jumpsuits. It's an interesting thing. and they never found our captain. He went down the ship. So I lost, you know. I've been through this thing that people tell me is traumatic. I guess it is. When I was going through it, I wasn't like, oh, this is a traumatic situation I'm going through right now. I was just kind of living through it. But that whole thing was the easiest. That was the easiest, was to survive. All I had to do was survive. I wasn't thinking about anything else. The hardest part has been everything else afterwards. Since afterwards, I've had to deal with the media and the press. They were hassling me, they were hassling my family, they want the story. There's all these false things coming out, all these things that weren't true about the captain, and people just wanting your story. I'll tell my story and they get it wrong. It was hard. Everyone, I don't know, I had to deal with PTSD, and I didn't know how to deal with it. My family, they didn't know how to take it well either. I got in this huge fight with my family afterwards. We're fine now, but they didn't know how to deal with it. They were taking it stressful. And eventually, God came kind of again. What I kind of learned through this whole thing is that God doesn't put you in a situation that you can't handle. I went on a walk with Mark and we started praying. We started praying for a while, and we knew that I had to go to Boston, that I couldn't go home. Going to Boston, which was really nice, and because I was away from everything, where people didn't really know me, but I still had a support system there, and a really good support system where just enough people knew me, but most of them were sailors, so they understood what I was going through. And when I was coming back to Auburn, I was incredibly nervous because I knew all my friends would be asking me about it and wanting to know and asking me all these questions that I answered 1,000 times. It was great because when I got back to Auburn, no one really knew because I forgot that Auburn was a bubble. And they don't really get international news here. So at first I was kind of upset, but then I realized, like, once again, like, God put me in a place I could handle. He put me in a place where people wouldn't be harassing me for my story, wouldn't be asking me all these questions. He put me in a place where I could tell my story at my own time, which is really cool. So to kind of end this up, let me find the notes. Did I get them? Hang on. Oh wait. Here we go. What I kind of want to get from this is that God can make good even in a hurricane. Even in a hurricane, even when my whole day has gone really wrong, the most wrong it can go, He made good. He made positive things happen. And also, when you're doing God's plan, when you're doing God's will, I knew it. Like when I was on the boat, I knew there was no place that I would rather have gone. And I knew there was a reason for me to be on there. I knew He had a plan for me. I didn't know that plan was to go through a hurricane, but I knew He had a plan for me, and there was a reason. And that all I could do was let Him work through me. You know, I feel like I didn't do anything when He was working through me. All I did was be myself and just live in God, and that He did the rest. Yeah, and so like, just let God do the work. I think that's it.
I don't know, how many of you knew that the bounty went down? Did anybody remember seeing that? There's all kinds of stuff online about it. You can go on, there were news reports, and the Weather Channel even did an hour-long special.
Yeah, they did a special on our rescue.
Yeah, on the rescue. And it really kind of tells the story.
The Weather Channel one's the best in terms of the rescue.
Yeah.
The online stuff has a lot of not
News
facts.
interviews.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You kind of take it with a grain of salt.
Do what?
With the online stuff, you can take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
It's a lot of bashing too.
There's one with ABC News. on Good Morning America,
Oh, yeah.
where you're
Oh,
there.
that was horrible. That was like what I pointed out with the news. It was, we weren't ready, and people really pressed us, and it was just not what we wanted at all.
Yeah. Anyways, you can find out a lot of information, and you know the term mutiny on the Bounty, right? Well, that's the story of the HMS Bounty, and this boat that Anna was on was used in that movie, and then Pirates of the Caribbean and all those kind of things. Yeah. And you don't mind talking about it, right? Yeah. Since you just stood up here in front of everybody and talked about it. This is the third time I've got to hear the story, and it really is amazing in a lot of ways for me because of the behind the scenes stuff, that Anna was talking about, finding God in the hurricane and all that kind of stuff. It's one of those stories that you can easily make into something like crazy amazing, like visions and someone showing up in the middle of the storm and saying, walk towards the light, kind of stuff. But really, it's just a story of prayer. It's a story of faith. It's a story of trusting God. It's a story of making yourself available to be used. And in the midst of that, finding that God really is there, finding that God really is true to His promises, that God does give you what you need when you need it, that kind of stuff, Yeah, I was thinking today with Anna talking tonight, I just thought of the verse where Jesus says, He's with the disciples on the last night, and He says to them, I've told you all this stuff. This is in the Gospel of John, so there's like 4 chapters of stuff. And He says, I've told you all this stuff so that in me you might have peace. And then He says, in this world you will have trouble, but take heart. Take heart, for I've overcome the world. And I really love that phrase, take heart. What is He saying to him? Trust me. He's saying to him that don't let fear win. Don't be overcome by the doubts that you have. Trust me, and I've overcome the world. And I think the longer I go along in this whole thing, I think the biggest struggle for those of us who are Christians, the biggest struggle in life is the most basic struggle, and that's will I trust God? God's promised all these things, and we choose whether we are going to trust Him or not. And what I'm learning, and God's still beating me on the head, and He's teaching you, is that the only way you really ever get to a place where you know that, in the deep down kind of knowing, is when you begin to live into that. When you begin to say, okay, here I go, Lord, and you step into that kind of thing, and that's where, at least in my estimation, it really becomes real. It really becomes real. And I don't know the stuff that you guys are facing right now. I know it's the end of at least half a semester. I know when you ask people, what are you going to pray for, or what do you need prayer for, everyone says tests or whatever, and I know those things are big. But I also know that there's lots of bigger things going on in people's lives. And I don't know that you can equate them to being a hurricane in the sense of, something physically threatening. It might be, but all of us have those storms, all those things where we tend to lose heart, where we tend to lose hope. And I really believe that also is the greatest opportunity to see the reality that God is with you, that God's for you, that God is able to do immeasurably more than all we can ask. So before the band comes back this evening, I just thought we'd take a few moments to spend some time silently in prayer for whatever it is going on in your life. Maybe it's stuff for you, maybe it's stuff for people around you. Maybe you really got to see God do something huge, to fix a relationship or to mend a broken heart or to provide money or whatever, Maybe it's something like that. Maybe it's something even deeper than those kind of things. But I thought we'd just take a few moments right where you're at, or you can spread out a little bit and spend some time silently in prayer. Aside from that phone that's going off back there. I'm kidding. And also, if you really feel like you need somebody to pray with, the staff and the interns or big dogs will be at the back. If you can grab them by the arm and say, just would you come and pray with me? We're not going to pray forever. We're going to take 3, 4, 5 minutes. But if you need someone to pray with you, there'll be folks at the back that can just grab them by the arm and say, hey, would you pray with me? And so I'm just going to open us. I'm going to leave it open for a few moments, and then I'll close us when we're done. Father, we're thankful for this evening, and we're thankful for Anna's story, and mostly thankful right now, God, that she's even here with us. And I'm thankful, Father, that in the midst of the most crazy, amazing situation that we might be able to imagine, she found that you were there. That you're continuing to guide her and provide for her and take care of her. God, I pray for us right now in this place with whatever stuff we have. Lord, that you'll give us the courage, you'll give us the heart, the courage to bring it to you right now. And Lord, I pray that in the midst of this silence, in the midst of this community, surrounded by people who are trying to understand more and to grow in faith in you, that will hear you speak, that will find what we're really looking for. So why don't you take some time and pray.